So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio.
Hello and welcome to Trending with Timmerie. This is Stacy Trasankos in for Timmerie, who's out on maternity leave still. It is such an honor to be here with you and share this hour talking about some really cool stuff. In today's show, we're gonna go through a variety of different topics. I want to talk, nothing controversial, of course, we wouldn't do that. I want to start off talking in the first segment about working moms. There was, so that's not controversial, is it? There was a post on LinkedIn about a rocket scientist who was giving a talk at a girls' school, and for whatever reason, she had her children with her. And she posted a picture of herself with her children, and she was her two little girls. And she's given this talk on rocket science, and it got a whole bunch of reactions on LinkedIn and a whole bunch of comments, not all of them positive, though. There was some of the typical criticisms that we hear. And so it's a useful conversation to dive into this perception of women, working moms, what to do. I don't ever tell you what to think. I try, that's my goal, to help you learn to think. So I just want to comment. I think it's useful to just comment on the situation and analyze it, because that helps you in your own life, and it helps me in my own life sort through these things and try to figure out. And if nothing else, it helps us both be a little more empathetic about situations that are going on, because it can be really easy to make a knee-jerk reaction to a picture. And I'm sure you have a lot of your own opinions about whether moms should work or not. But I just want to talk about the bigger picture there of what it is today. I get a lot of questions. I'm a chemist, and I also studied theology, and I do a lot of writing and teaching, and I'm executive director at Bishop Strickland's St. Philip Institute. And my husband and I just recently started running Children of God for Life to fight the use of aborted children in research. So I do a lot of things, and I have a lot of children. So I do have a lot of thoughts to share with you about what it even means in 2021 to be a working mom, and how we might start to think about that. So, again, not controversial at all. The other topic I want to talk about in the second segment is something that I want to give you my mother's view of something that Cardinal Mueller said about two popes, about this media image of two popes, obviously talking about the emeritus Pope Benedict XVI and also Pope Francis. And I really appreciated, and he wrote it in Italian, and so thank the Lord for Google Translate. I was able to read his essay in English, and it was pretty good. But I really appreciated the clarity, that's what I love about the Catholic Church, the clarity that he brought to this issue, some things I had never thought about before. But if you're going to take out the razor and be very, very precise, which is what we do in dogmatic theology, which I studied, if you're going to be very precise about the words you use, it is mathematical. It's like if you're not precise when you're doing calculus, you're going to get the wrong answer. And if you're a chemist, you're going to blow something up if you get the wrong answer. So I appreciate the precision. And I appreciated what Cardinal Mueller had to say about how we think of these two men who are popes and what it means. You know, first of all, spoiler, there aren't two popes. We don't say that. But he gives some clarity on why we don't say that. But he takes it one step further to talk about what I think of as sibling rivalry, where there's a lot of Catholics in the media who line up behind one or the other of the men, Pope Benedict XVI and Pope Francis, and start fighting about conservative and liberal topics. And I think it would be good for us to talk about that, to just face it head on and have a conversation about that. The third segment, this is really not very, well, to me, it's not very controversial. I love to talk about miracles. And I know you probably have questions about miracles, or, we're Catholics. We think about miracles a lot. And I think everybody, and that's the point, everybody is confronted with this question of miracles, even if you're not a person of faith. And I found a really interesting essay written by a PhD physicist who I gather from his essay doesn't believe in miracles. And so he's trying to explain some things, but he had some really interesting comments that were good. And I just want to sort through that. It's kind of fun. It's another one of those topics where once you dive into it, you didn't know you could think so much about miracles or sibling rivalries within the church or working moms. So getting back to that first topic. And I would love, by the way, I'm here on Relevant Radio. I am filling in for Timmery. This is Stacy Trasenkos with the, I'm told, still Texas accent. I grew up in Texas. I moved to the Northeast for 25 years, and I came back to Texas. And Texans told me I had a strange accent. So I was kind of bummed because I thought maybe I'd lost it. But I've been back here for 3 years now. So if you hear the Texas, I'm very happy about that. I'm here filling in for Timmery, and I want to talk to you. So if you want to call in, if you have something to say, something to add to what I'm saying, please give us a call, 888-914-9149, 888-914-9149. So I don't know if you saw this on LinkedIn or not, but the back to that mom I was talking about, it was the, how it is on social media. The picture caught my interest, and because it was a beautiful picture. It's just a snapshot with the phone, but here's this woman. She's really pretty, and she's standing in front of a podium, and she's holding a baby girl who's playing with her necklace. And standing beside her is a toddler playing with some toys, it looks like. And so she's talking. But it says on the board behind her, "Welcome to our scientist in residence, Dr. Flavia Tata Nardini." And I read it, and she's saying, it says she's the CEO and co-founder at Fleet Space Technologies. So she's giving a talk at a girls' school. Now, it says Laredo College, but it's in Australia. And I went to Australia with Catholic Answers a few years ago, and I didn't know this, but a college in Australia is actually a high school. So she's at this all-girls high school, and she says, "I love this photo so very much. I had planned to talk about space and STEM, STEM, in front of hundreds of high school girls at Laredo, and I didn't have a babysitter. My little one didn't want to leave my arms, and her sister didn't want to miss out, so she stood out very proud next to me. I'm sure those hundreds of girls and my children learnt an important lesson that day. Nothing can stop women to change the world." And so there was a lot of praise for that. It's very cute. But I think Karen's listening in, and if Karen, if you have something to add here in just a minute, I would appreciate your 2 cents. Are you there? When I saw this, I thought, well, of course. How many times when you were raising your children did things go exactly as planned for the day?
Never. No, a few times, but no, yeah. I love this too, Stacy. This is like, I grew up in a girl gang. I have 3 sisters. My mother was a single mom, and she was a working mom. I don't know what it means to not be a working mom. It's like, as soon as mom happens, it's work. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I love this too. And having myself 2 adult daughters, both they're twins, 23-year-olds, it gives me a lot of hope for women that this is accepted and it's, it's praised. Yeah, there are some snarky comments in there Oh, well, you're a great CEO, but you didn't plan to have a babysitter. Yeah.
I know.
Stop. That's not how it works. So,
Yes.
no, I like her priorities.
I do too. And you know, she's winging it. And that's what we do.
Yeah, that's what we do.
we get creative in the moment. It's a very motherly creativity. There was one comment that really got my attention. It said, like you were saying, said bad planning. Where's the father? Men tend to do what is right for them, leaving everything to women. Women celebrate if they succeed to manage a situation that should not have occurred in the first place. And I thought that is, you know, and I know people on the internet can post anything, but I thought that is really unfair. Because first of all, we don't know where the father is. I mean, he may have had a meeting that day and couldn't be there. The babysitter could have canceled at the last minute. This has never happened to me, but maybe somebody forgot to call the babysitter.
Right.
That has happened to me before. But we just to talk about what it means to have your children integrated fully in whatever it is you're doing as a woman or a man. Yeah. What does it mean to have your children integrated? It means you take them with you wherever you're doing in life. And if it makes some things hard now and then, deal with it.
Right.
You know?
It used to be a big take your daughter to work day, take your child to work day. Why does it have to be a national holiday? So
yeah.
We can function. We can do our professional job and be a parent. I mean, it's happened since the beginning of time, right? I mean,
right.
You don't stop working and providing when you become a parent, mother or a father. So
no, we both do. And I'm not saying like I'm the greatest executive director in the history of the world, but I got this job with Bishop Strickland after being home with my kids for 15 years. I left my job at DuPont as a chemist, and I stayed at home with my little highly complex composite systems of atoms and molecules with rational souls who call me mom. But I started writing and teaching from there, and then I ended up working back here in Texas with Bishop Strickland. But I was able to, because of this attitude of just get it done. It's my husband and I are raising our family. We're both working all the time. We're doing what it takes. He does the dishes when he needs to. He cooks more than I do now. But, well, because I burn things. But here at the Institute, and if you have a job out there, the Institute has always had a policy that parents are allowed to bring their kids to work whenever they need to. Awesome. So our director of family life has had 2 babies since I've been here, and she's brought both of them to work with her for the first 4 months.
Yeah.
And the whole team just sort of accepted that.
It's so amazing. We call ourselves pro-life people, but if we ask people to hide their families at home and not integrate them into their working life, then how is that embracing life? So that's a really cool corporate mentality. I like that.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And, Bishop, we've got a picture at National Catholic Register where they did an interview at the Institute, and Bishop Strickland is standing next to the director of family life, holding her baby.
Nice.
It's great. It's good.
That's awesome. Patrick wants to jump in. What do you have to say, Patrick?
Yeah, my mom was a working mom for almost the entire lifetime I lived at home, and it was just amazing how she was able to juggle, not just like working, while we went to school and all that stuff, but she would still come home and she loved to cook, but it's amazing that she would still come home and cook and do all the cleaning and stuff like that. So it's just amazing what my mom did, and she's obviously reflective of many moms around the country doing the same thing like you two did. And and looking back on it, I'm wondering how she did it, and I don't know. But it was just amazing, because she worked the full schedule as a nurse. So, that's what she did, and it was just amazing what she did. And she just retired just a couple of years ago, and she still says sometimes that she still misses going out a little bit and doing the work. She still does some consulting work a little bit on the side, just calling, other people and stuff for help. But, it's just amazing what she did.
That's awesome. That's a great thing for a young boy to see too, and then you look at it now as a grown man and have that perspective. It's really cool.
Definitely,
Yeah.
you
Yes.
definitely have a great appreciation for it.
Yes. Well, thank you both. After the break, we're getting ready to go to break. After the break, we are going to move on to talk about this essay by Cardinal Mueller and the false image of two popes. I'm Stacy Trasankos. See you back in a few minutes.
Relevant Radio is supported by CatholicSingles.com and the Catholic Singles app, the Catholic dating community for single men and women to meet other single Catholics through interactive polls and personalized matches. CatholicSingles.com, genuinely Catholic.
So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmery on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
Hello, this is Stacy Trasankos in for Timmery on Trending with Timmery. I want to talk about an article about an essay. So the article's in Catholic News Agency by Courtney Mears, and it's about an essay that Cardinal Mueller wrote on the media image of two popes. It's out today, that threatens the papacy as a principle of unity. I love stuff like this because it's what I've said before is living faith. It's not just learning the dogma, although we need to be very precise and learn those things. That's absolutely necessary. But it's also talking about how the precision changes the way that we live our life of faith. So the essay he wrote was about the situation that we have with this perceived image in the media of two popes. So I'm just saying two popes. I'm not saying there are two popes. I'm just using that language because that's the position he's examining. In the light of this era of secular thought and the mass media and political and ideological points of view that he says can contaminate theological judgment. So what's he talking about? In his essay, he takes up the Christocentrism of Peter's service. There can only be one pope. So we live in a situation now, in a historical moment in the history of the papacy and the church, where we have the Pope Emeritus, Pope Benedict XVI, and we have Pope Francis. And that doesn't mean, and I'm sure you recognize this, I haven't met anybody who actually thinks there are two popes, but there are two men who have been called pope. And how do we make sense of that? Well, it's not that difficult. I mean, the successor of Peter, there can only be one. And so when Pope Benedict XVI became Pope Emeritus, it's a different situation than you have in a diocese. So the usual reference to the possibility of the appointment as emeritus of a diocesan bishop is different from the characteristic of the uniqueness of the Bishop of Rome, who is himself personally the successor of Peter, and thus represents the rock on which Jesus builds his church. So there's a difference there. It's not just when you have a bishop that becomes emeritus. This is a different situation. And it lies in the fact that the Pope is not only, like the other bishops, a successor of the apostles of the college, of all members of the episcopate. He is that. But the Pope is specifically and individually the successor of the apostle Peter, while the other bishops are not successors of a single apostle, but of the apostles in general. So there's a difference there. Now, you might think that doesn't really matter, but it does. It's one of these things where if you get one word wrong, you can land yourself in heresy, and we don't want to do that. We would rather put our hand in fire, right? Just to impress upon you, like I know I said about with physics or chemistry or mathematics, you can't get a detail wrong, or you can get the whole wrong answer. it was like this too. When I took my first theology class, dogmatic theology class, I had a straight A in that course. I made the highest grade I could make on every, because I poured myself into it because it was serious. I'm like, it wasn't like taking chemistry. This was like, if I didn't make an A, I was failing God somehow. It's not really like that, but to me it was. And I wanted to do my best. I got, on the very last final exam, I got everything right. On the very last paper, I said something about a part of the Trinity. And my professor circled it in red and took off points. And he only took off 5, but he said, that you can't say that. You cannot say one word in the whole course. So it really made an impression. He could have counted off more. It made an impression on me that you don't say anything wrong. You be very careful about what you say. Well, talking about the two you can't say there are 2 successors of the Apostle Peter. You can't say that. And in his essay, Cardinal Mueller talks about this foundation of the unity. He said, he talks about Aristotle and metaphysics. He says, every multiplicity without the principle of unity is exposed to the dissolution of the whole. Now, what does that mean? We understand this at a very fundamental level. It means if you were to take a human body and chop it up and lay all the parts, I know it's kind of macabre, but go with me here, and lay all the parts out on the sidewalk, you don't have a human body anymore. You have cut it up. You've multiplied it without the principle of unity, and you ruined the whole thing. And you can't do that. And that's a very important concept in Christian and Catholic theology. If you want the principle of unity and you want multiplicity, we're talking more about something like friendship or relationships or marriage, 2 becoming 1. So there is some multiplicity there, but with the principle of unity. So if you take this back to Pope Benedict XVI, Pope Emeritus, and Pope Francis, neither one of them wish it to be that anybody would think one's a pope and that there are 2 popes. Neither one of them would want that. They themselves, in humility, are subservient to Christ, just like Peter was, in humility. They know they can't change that, and they are subservient to Christ because Pope Francis is the Pope. Pope Benedict XVI is no longer the successor of Peter. He's stepped away from that role. So I know you might be thinking, well, I know that. It's good to recognize that and to be very careful about it. There can never exist at the same time 2 bishops of Rome, 2 popes, 2 successors of Peter. There can't. And he takes a turn here and takes this impression in the media, the dominance of media, and what an important role media and imagery plays in our lives, and he takes it to, why he's really talking about this in the secular visual media of 2 popes standing side by side, and he makes an important commentary on us laity. And through my mom's lens, it reminded me of a lot of times the things I hear coming from my own children, like this.
Yeah, don't take my spot.
No, I wasn't even thinking about it. Don't care.
Don't
totally
take my spot.
With my chair. My chair's the bomb.
Don't take it. Don't take it.
You're good.
Leave it alone.
You're good.
Stop breathing my air.
I'm just looking out the window.
This is my air.
No, you're touching me.
This is your air. I'm not touching you. Mom, he's breathing my air.
Please.
You already drank yours. This one is mine. I had one.
Okay.
One sip.
Little tiny
one sip. No! Stop, Mom! Mom!
That was a sip. That was a little itty bitty one.
Stop. I'm gonna call Mom. Mom?
She will come.
Stop touching me. This is my bed. No, get down. No, it's my bed.
Ow.
You're okay. No, you're okay.
Ow.
You're okay. No.
Mom.
No, shh.
So, was that making you crazy? Did that make your head want to explode? Is that how you sometimes feel when you are scrolling through Twitter, Facebook, social media, and you hear Catholics at odds with each other. I picture it like when I hear my kids doing that, and they do. This is normal. Children do this, but as adults, we're supposed to grow past it. But I'm gonna be the first to say, I also get pulled into, don't breathe my air. You're in my spot. I can get there too, and so I'm telling you this so that you and I both can be more aware of it. But what's happening here? I picture our Blessed Mother Mary. I picture her sitting there with her head in her hands when she's looking at social media, and there are some very conservative Catholics who line up behind Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, and there are some very liberal Catholics who line up behind Pope Francis. And like Cardinal Mueller says, at the extreme, the principles of Catholic theology are suspected of conservative or liberal ideology, depending on the points of interest of the people. And so people try to appropriate one pope or the other to their cause, and they end up breathing, don't breathe my air, get out of my spot, don't take my place. And I picture Mother Mary sitting there with her head in her hands going, I wish you kids would stop fighting. You're fighting over things that don't matter. And that's kind of the point, though, because when those children are fighting, God love them. I have picked them up by the scruff of the neck before and held them apart, and I've read every parenting book from infanthood to teenage years, and I still, after parenting for 31 years, some days don't feel like I know anything about what I'm doing because they're all so different. But you do, in the moment, the children really do think this issue is big. Especially, I got 4 teenage daughters. Sometimes the things they're experiencing and fighting over, the parent might say, I wish you would stop. I can't believe you're fighting over this goofy thing. It won't matter 3 days from now. But in the moment, the kids think it's serious. And so I don't want to dismiss that. But if you and I are ever tempted to behave that way, and I'll be the first to say I am, because sometimes somebody says something, I'm like, oh, wrong. I'm not going to let this go. And sometimes I have to let it go. I have to take a walk just to, But what happens here is if we line up behind liberal or conservative ideologies, if we stop being anything but Catholic, we're kind of playing into this two popes image that we have to guard against. Because what matters more than anything on any given day is this principle of unity. It matters that we do not cut the body up and throw it on the sidewalk and try to make the argument that we're still one body. Because we're not if we do that. We're not. So don't ever contribute to that. And if you see someone else contributing to it, I don't. If you try to correct them, you're going to be like, stop breathing my air. You probably shouldn't try to correct them in that moment. But don't have any of it. Stay away from it and pray for unity. Pray a Hail Mary because she's probably not enjoying it any more than you are. Because our Mother Mary, is like any, she is the mother. And all of us other mothers know this feeling very well. We just want our family united. Like whatever the issue is, let's work it out in a spirit where we all have each other's best interest at heart. To pray for that other person, pray for that grace of clarity and peace. Because sometimes people freak out because they're really worried or they're desperate or they're confused. And there's a lot of that right now. But don't be part of the discord. The phone number here is 888-914-9149. I'd like to hear what you have to say about some of this. We have a couple of more minutes before we're going to the break. And moving on to talk about miracles, a really, really interesting topic in the last segment. But I like this image of our if that soundbite troubled you and you were waiting, please let it be over. That's sometimes probably how Mother Mary feels. So you're guarding a lot more than just, your sanity on the internet by not participating in the Discord. You're actually guarding the principle of unity of the Catholic Church, because whatever it is in the moment that people are at Discord, and I'm throwing out liberal and conservative like two words. Those are huge ideologies, and there's a lot. I mean, I'm sort of skating past all that's going on in politics and on Twitter right now. I'm skating past it, trying to get beyond it. It will pass. You got to keep fighting for good. You got to keep standing for the truth. But if you divide the body, you don't have a prayer of doing that. I'm Stacy Trasankos. We'll be back after the break to talk about miracles.
Catholic Order of Foresters is proud to sponsor the Relevant Radio studio line. For information about employment opportunities and flexible premium life insurance plans, visit relevantradio.com/forester.
Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
Hello, this is Stacy Trasankos. I'm guest hosting for Timmerie today while she is at home, surely snuggling with her newest little baby girl. And I'm really so happy to be here. I look forward to spending this time with you on Tuesdays and Thursdays while she's out on maternity leave and talking about trending topics. I love to talk about miracles. I really like, I used to I am always going to be a chemist, just like I'm always going to be a Texan, but I used to look at this whole thing. I used to not believe in miracles. I used to not believe in God. I used to not think about God and shove that question off and I didn't have time for it. It wasn't important to me. So I understand this perspective that I'm about to describe. So in Medium.com, there is a scientist, Dr. Tim Anderson. He studied statistical mechanics, general relativity, and quantum field theory, and he's a principal research scientist at Georgia Tech. And he wrote a very interesting essay on miracles. And he's looking at them through a scientific lens, and I totally understand what he's saying. I'm very impressed that he is talking about C.S. Lewis and philosophy. So he's talking about science through a philosophical lens. And I appreciate what he's saying, but I want to add to it. He says that miracles may be superphysical phenomena. What does he mean by that? It may be something that has a scientific, therefore physical explanation, but it's beyond what we can understand about physical, or beyond what we currently understand. It's superphysical. It's something beyond our grasp, a superphysical phenomena. And I want to examine that a little bit because it is well thought out, but in my opinion, now that I've studied Catholic theology and looked at science through a Catholic lens, I think it's an incomplete theory. It's not fully logical. There's some point where you just have to say, I'm done thinking about this, which is exactly what I used to do, and let it go. And it's actually a fuller logic, a fuller truth, of course, to view science through the lens of our Catholic faith. And that also leads you to conclude that miracles have to be possible. What do I mean by that? If God created a totally, consistently interacting totality that we can study with science, and God holds everything in existence, then of course He can work miracles. Of course He can work miracles. He's not bound to the laws of nature. He can do special things for the sake of our salvation anytime He wants to. If He wanted to make Patrick rise up right now and start flying around the room for the sake of our salvation, He could. But that's probably not going to help our salvation, so Patrick will probably remain seated. But that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. How do you view this question? So Dr. Anderson says that in a Pew study on religion in 2010, about 80% of Americans believe in miracles. But he says that depends on, he's quoting C.S. Lewis, he says, what we learn from experience depends on the kind of philosophy we bring to experience. In other words, our worldview affects what we think about miracles. If you're viewing the world through the Catholic lens, you're trying to see reality, you're trying to see what's there, you see a universe through your Catholic lens as a consistently interacting totality of atoms and all the other things that are out there. If you don't see it through that lens, you're kind of just looking out there going, you're just kind of standing there scratching your head. So I find the Catholic view much more exciting. But Dr. Anderson has some interesting things to say about the mystery in science. So first of all, he just says, we can't disprove that miracles or the supernatural exist. And so he's right. If you're only using science, you can't disprove that miracles occur. Meaning if a host becomes flesh, you can't disprove that it happened. You can't disprove that the supernatural exists. And so it sort of leaves it there. And now that's where we as Catholics would pick up with the deductive logic of philosophy. And we would say, yes, you can prove that God exists. St. Thomas Aquinas starts out the Summa talking about that. You can, by reason, know that God exists. And that's another topic for another day. Back to miracles, Dr. Anderson says that some natural laws we have discovered in the last century are more fantastical than any miracle. And I agree with him here. Quantum physics suggests that matter is made of particles and wave. Now, see, a chemist would say, well, it depends on what equation you apply to the problem at hand. But we're just explaining what we can with our equations. That a cat can be dead or alive, again, chemists wouldn't exactly say it that way, but I'm not going to get into that argument. I'm not going to today. That distant particles of matter can influence one another instantaneously, like the spooky action at a distance. If you think the Holy Trinity doesn't make sense, you will find interpretations of quantum physics even more confusing. That's him saying that. The Holy Trinity is a mystery that we can't fully understand. And I would say quantum physics is probably also a mystery we'll never fully understand. But I'm not going to leave it there and say it's because of some super physical phenomena. The reason we won't understand everything about quantum physics is that we're human. We're not God. God understands everything about what we call quantum physics. God understands everything about everything. God knows. God holds everything in existence. We are looking at the world through our five senses, and we are using our rational soul and our minds and our intellect and our will to try to understand it. That's why we have the scientific method. What does it start with? Observation. You observe, and you try to make sense of things. So that's the more rational view of things. But there are mysteries in science. There are more mysteries in physics, more mysteries in biology and what life means than the things we know. The things we know are dwarfed by the things that we don't know. And that is actually in a biochemistry college textbook in the secular education. It's not a religious textbook, but it says that our knowledge is dwarfed by our ignorance. And I like that because that gives you this awe when you're doing science that you're studying the handiwork of God. And of course, it's beyond your complete comprehension, just like the Holy Trinity is beyond your complete comprehension. But every little bit of truth you learn and discover is wonderful because a little more truth is better than not having a little more truth. So back to miracles, that is what he's calling miracles, that there's something super physical. And we can agree maybe that it is super physical, but the reason it's super physical is because of God. And he goes on to compare this to a number of other things, but he ends this essay, at the end of the day, we cannot say that miracles never happen. True. Probably most miracles that have been claimed are false. But only one miracle needs to have happened for us to say that miracles do happen. I thought he was going to talk about Christ there. But to find that to be the case through the scientific method would itself be miraculous. Let's chop that up here as we get ready to wind down the show. At the end of the day, we cannot say that miracles never happen. That's true. You can't say that they never happen. But as Catholics, we don't do that. As Catholics, we say, of course they happen. They're in the Bible. And scientifically speaking, it only makes sense that a God who created this universe could also work miracles whenever he chooses to. So our job, then, is to figure out when that happens and when it doesn't happen. Dr. Anderson says probably most miracles that have been claimed are false. Let's look at that. Probably most miracles that have been claimed are false. There could be miracles that are claimed to be true that are, in fact, not miracles. And we have to be open to that, because it's not a test of your faith in God, it's a test of your faith in whoever studied the miracle. I've spent a lot of time studying Eucharistic miracles, a topic I hope to get into in another show. I've written a book, it's not out yet, with a priest on the Eucharist. And here's the thing. I don't think that some very good science has been done in the study of some Eucharistic miracles. I think sometimes the science doesn't prove what some people think it proves, but at the same time, I'm not discounting that the miracle could have happened. It absolutely could have happened. It's just that when miracles happen, you don't have a scientific team standing by ready to collect evidence because nobody was expecting it to happen. Dr. Anderson ends by saying to find that to be the case, that miracles happen, through the scientific method would be itself miraculous. Now, hold on to this thought for the day that we get to Eucharistic miracles, maybe later this week or next week. To find that to be the case through the scientific method would itself be miraculous. What he's saying is the scientific method can't study miracles. Amen, brother. Amen. The scientific method studies things that are repeatable and predictable. The scientific method, you go out, you look at things, you make some hypotheses, you do some experiments, you put it all together, a lot of hypotheses build up to give you a theory you're pretty confident about, but just as we saw with quantum physics, those classical theories sometimes that you think explain everything, you suddenly learn they don't. So theories themselves, huge, enormous theories, like classical physics, can be proved to be inadequate. And so that's great. It means physicists have job security. We're always going to be learning new things. And so you can't prove that miracles happen through the scientific method. What does that mean to Eucharistic miracles? It means there have been some claims of Eucharistic miracles. There have been some scientific studies done. But as with any miracle, you don't ever want, see the way I've explained this, looking at the world through our Catholic eyes, you don't ever want to say that your faith depends on miracles happening, because that's inverting the order of things. You don't want your faith to depend on miracles being true. You want your faith to inform the way you look at the universe and your logic to conclude that of course miracles are true. So that kind of frees you up. And not to jump off into a big subject right here at the end, but keep that in mind when you're talking about something like evolution. You're not using science to prove your faith. I rail against that. I have written a book called Particles of Faith, and that's one of the themes of the book. Don't use science to prove what you ought to hold in faith. Faith is the substance of what? You know, right? Faith is the substance of things unseen. So we have faith and we have reason, and we put it all together, and we have this fully coherent view of the world that tells us that miracles absolutely can happen. When they happen and what they mean, that is another story. So that's what I would say if I were sitting in the room talking with not you, but talking with Dr. Anderson. I would invite him to remember if you were listening a couple of shows ago last week, I said the best way to evangelize the atheist, and I don't know whether Dr. Anderson's an atheist or not, but the way to evangelize an atheist is to overlap and agree with them on the love of science, if they do love science. A lot of them do. agree with them all the way, but escort them to that cliff where you need to take the leap of faith to realize you got to look up from the ground and see the supernatural to get the whole picture, and help them be confident that it'll be okay if they take that leap of faith, that they're not going to fall and get hurt and life won't make sense anymore. That when you do start to look at science through the lens of faith, then you're not saying miracles may be superphysical phenomena. You're saying miracles are God tapping us on the shoulder saying, yeah, I'm holding everything in existence, including you and all the atoms and electrons that make up your body and keep your heart beating all throughout your life and keep your brain waves going and keeps you living. And that there's more than this biological life, that you need to use your body and your mind to practice virtue and journey towards heaven. So see, it just makes a lot more sense. So that is, to amend science and philosophy from a scientist's perspective, that is science and philosophy through a theological perspective. And I find that it is the fuller truth. My book is called Particles of Faith. I have the first book came out in 2016, gives a little bit of my story from chemistry into Catholicism. And then it was followed up with a book, student edition, that goes into how to navigate science in the light of faith. And I just told you one of the biggest secrets. It's not a secret, but one of the biggest teachings in the book is don't ever stop looking at the universe through your Catholic lens, because that's what we're all about. We're looking there to see God's handiwork. My name is Stacy Trasenkos. I'm executive director here at the St. Philip Institute. And I just want to end the show here by encouraging you to come back and listen to the show every day at 6 o'clock on Relevant Radio. They've got some interesting things lined up while Timmery's out. I'm going to be in on Tuesdays and Thursdays talking about trending topics, and I'd like to get into Eucharistic miracles more and share with you some of the things I found while I was digging through all the scientific reports I could find about various Eucharistic miracles and writing them up into a book. But where I come out at the end of it all is your faith should be based on believing in Jesus Christ. Christ said, "This is my body." That's all we need to know about the Eucharist. Our whole faith derives from there, just like the way we look at the universe derives through how we see it as God's handiwork. So thank you for joining us today. I hope to talk to you again in a couple of days. And going to get ready and go talk to my kids tonight and make sure they're not fighting with each other, and make sure I don't need to put my head in my hands and say, I wish y'all would stop. Stacy Trasenkos, thank you so much. I will talk to you later.